Afternoon. We advise everyone to please settle down as we are about to start the program in a few minutes. We advise our audience here at the Gimenez Gallery to please move forward and occupy the tables and seats in front so that we may begin the program as soon as possible. Thank you very much. And the tables in front as we proceed the program. My name is 𝗩𝗶𝗀𝗻 and I will be your host this afternoon. So I am very much excited to be with you here this afternoon here at the Gimenez Gallery, and let's get ready for an unforgettable program ahead. We are now here at the Gimenez Gallery, as I mentioned, to honor and recognize the achievements, the hard work, the incredible talent of our participants who poured their hearts and souls into their creative endeavors, their first books. So this year, we received a lot of entries for the 23rd Madrigal-Gonzalez Best First Book Award, and we now have in our presence our 5 finalists. But there can only be one winner. Aren't you all excited to know who the winner is? That's good to hear, because I am excited and I hope you are too, especially to our live audience on Facebook. So, before we start and proceed, we first invite on stage the incredible director of the Institute of Creative Writing, Dr. 𝗍𝗲𝗶𝗍𝗀 Jr., to give his opening remarks. Please give him a round of applause.
Magandang hapon. Excited na excited tayong malaman kung sino ang magwawagi this year mula sa 5 finalists. Mamaya i-announce na natin. At kami dito sa 𝗍𝗶𝗍𝗶 ay natutuwa na sa proyektong ito. Isa ito sa aming main projects dahil excited tayong makilala ang mga best first book. Exciting mga project na ito dahil mga usually kabataang manunulat at bagong-bago talaga ang kanilang mga aklat. At ito ang kinikilala natin sa proyektong ito. At malaki pa sa salamat namin sa Madrigal-Gonzalez clan sa kinakatawan ni Atty. Jing Montinola na parating na. At Special din ito dahil sa loob ng 4 na taon ay hindi ito iginawad ng face-to-face. So naipon ang mga winners na hiniling ng mga nagwagi mula noong 2020 na sana ay mabanggit sila sa pagkakataong ito. At kinikilala natin noong 2020 ang nanalo ay si 𝗩𝗶𝗀𝗃 sa kanyang ang mga prosesyong dumaan sa unang bangungot. Ang mga nakalaban niya noon ay ilang sandali ni Regan Romero Marquez, Puera Bisita ni 𝗍𝗏𝗏𝗏. Filipino pala nung taon na yon, 2020. Ang kapangyarihang higit sa ating lahat ni Ronaldo Bimbo at ilang bitbit sa pagsagip sa sarili ni Romel Bonus na nakita ko kanina dito. Noong 2021, ang mga finalists ay sina Ronnie Baticulon sa kanyang Some Days You Can Save Them All, A Natural History of Empire ni 𝗍𝗏𝗀𝗃, The Philippines is Not a Small Country ni Gideon Lasco. Pero sa taong iyon, 2021, ang nanalo ay si Joel Donato 𝗍𝗏𝗃. Narito ba? Wala. At sa kanyang Wing of the Locust, no, noong 2021. Last year, noong 2022, ang mga finalists ay sina Makeda na sinulat ni 𝗩𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗏, Pananalig sa Bata ni 𝗍𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 isang dekadang resti ni Job Ortua Almero, tarantadong kalbo ni Kevin Eric Raymundo, pasakalya ni Leon Borlongan, napakarami nila nasa Filipino. Ang mga iniwan ng tubig ni Jason Tabinas, lahat ng nag-aangas ay inaagnas ni Paulo Tiausas, silat ni 𝗍𝗲𝗁𝗶𝗋𝗀 Salvador, Team Abangers ni Bunlao. Pero ang nagwagi noong 2022 last year ay si Nap Arcilia para sa kanyang makita. Ngayon ay nasa 2020 na tayo at di ko pwedeng i-announce yun. Mamaya ay malalaman natin sa na-i-announce ng ating pangunahing hukom of judge. Mamaya-maya yun. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Dr. Bakiran, for those opening remarks. And once again, congratulations to the previous winners of the Madrigal-Gonzalez Best First Book Award. But before we proceed, we first acknowledge the presence of our National Artist for Literature, Virgilio Almario. He is here with us today. And now, as we proceed further into the program, we now call on the Deputy Director of the Institute of Creative Writing, Dr. Vladimir B. Gonzalez, to introduce us to this year's panel of judges.
Salamat, Philip. Magandang araw po sa ating lahat. Kinikilala rin po ang presensya. Kakarating na po si Attorney Jean Gonzalez Montinola. Maraming salamat po sa pagsuporta sa ating mga manunulat at sana po ma-enjoy ninyo yung programa namin. Sa ngalan po ng UP Institute of Creative Writing, kinararangan ko po ipakilala ang mga naging tagabasa at nagrekomenda ng magbabaging aklat para sa taong ito. Una po, narito po si Ruel S. de Vera. Ito po siya. Ruel S. de Vera is Arts and Books Editor at the Philippine Daily Inquirer. He is author and editor of 16 books and teaches journalism at the Ateneo de Manila University's Department of Communication. Maraming salamat po sa pagdalo at sa iyong tulong sa Madrigal-Gonzalez Best First Book Award. Susunod po natin kikilalanin na ito po si Mookie Katigak-Lacuesta. She is an award-winning writer from the Philippines. She has published 5 collections of poetry, and her novel, Assembling Alice, was published by 𝗍𝗶𝗀𝗶 in 2021. She obtained an MFA from the New School University in 2004 and has since taught in major universities in Manila. Katigak-Lacuesta has also written for Esquire Philippines, Vogue Magazine, ABS-CBN's ANCX, and Rappler, among other publications and platforms. Katigak-Lacuesta has also been the Filipino delegate to international literary festivals in Rotterdam, Medellin, San Francisco, Macau, Kuala Lumpur, and South Korea. In 2015, she completed a writing residency for the International Writing Program at the University of Iowa. Maraming salamat, Mookie Katigak-Lacuesta, at magandang hapon. At panghuli po, mula po sa aming institute, ang laging gumagabay din sa amin, si Sir 𝗍𝗏𝘁 Dalisay. 𝗍𝗏𝘁 Dalisay has published over 40 books of fiction and non-fiction. His second novel, Soledad Sister, was shortlisted for the inaugural Man Asian Literary Prize in 2007 and has been published in Philippine, Italian, French, and American editions. He is Professor Emeritus of English at the University of the Philippines. Yan po ang ating mga lupon ng hurado sa ating Madrigal-Gonzalez Best First Book Award. Maraming salamat po at enjoy po natin ang programa ngayong araw.
So thank you, Dr. Gonzalez, for acquainting us with this year's panel of judges. Moving forward, Dr. Jose Y. Dalisay Jr., our head judge, will now take the reins to share with us how they judged this year's finalists and entries for the Madrigal-Gonzalez Best First Book Award. Please give Dr. Gonzalez a warm round of applause.
Maraming salamat. Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to greet and thank our very generous benefactor, Attorney Ging Gonzalez Montinola, who has kept this award alive for a quarter of a century now. It's hard to believe how far along we've come. And in that quarter of a century, the Madrigal-Gonzalez Best First Book Award has become an institution in our literary landscape, making possible the introduction of brilliant new talent in both English and Filipino. Malaking bagay po itong Madrigal-Gonzalez Best First Book Award. Bukod sa cash prize na tinataglay niya, talagang nakapagbibigay ito ng atensyon sa mga pinakamahuhusay na bagong manunulat sa Pilipinas. And you have the likes of course of 𝗍𝗏𝘁𝗶𝘀 who came out of the Madrigal-Gonzalez Best First Book Awards. So actually, some of you here are no stranger to us because we've met you in the workshops, we've read your books, but it is always wonderful to come upon a pile of new writings just for the year or the past 2 years and find new names that you never heard of before, but to come across with brilliant new material. Pampagising din sa amin sa 𝗍𝗶𝘁𝗶𝗹 and I'm sure sa buong institusyon ng literatura dito sa Pilipinas. Now, the judging for this year, we had, I think, about 32 books to look at, so that was quite a harvest. And I don't know if my fellow judges will agree, but it was both a bit hard and a bit easy. The easy part was kind of the first sifting through because the outstanding works really rose to the surface quickly. I'd say easily about a dozen works were really much more outstanding than others. And then came the hard part, which was sorting out really the best among the best. And that's basically you people at the center table here. And we appreciate how far you've come to be with us this afternoon. Oo nga pala, dati-dati ang Madrigal-Gonzalez awarding, we would hold it in a smaller place and the discussion would get very involved. And now it looks like we're kind of knocking around in a very large room. Kasi ito rin ang gagamitin para sa Writer's Night mamaya. But we look forward to a no less engaging discussion following these preliminaries. I'd also like to thank, of course, my fellow judges, Rui and Mookie. To be honest, I try to stay in the background for most of the judging. So you have them mainly to blame for whatever comes out today. No, I had to defer to them because they're much better equipped to read, for example, poetry, which is not my strong suit. And I'm very happy that I listened to them because they bring wisdom and experience to, and integrity, of course, to the judging process. So, tama na muna yun para sa mga aking mga pananalita. Again, congratulations to the finalists. Just being here is I think, a tremendous achievement. To announce yourselves, I'd also like to take note of the special note of the fact that this year we have a graphic novelist or graphic fictionist in our roster. Hindi ko siya mismo binibigyan ng pansin, ano? Hindi si Jay, kundi yung kanyang genre na ating tinatanggap naman dito sa Madrigal-Gonzalez. Just like years ago, we accepted the self-published work. So we are constantly opening our doors to new forms of literature, whether in English or Filipino, to make sure that it really represents the best of the crop out there. So again, thank you. Maraming salamat and congratulations to all.
And thank you, Dr. Dalisay, for those very kind words for our finalists. You know, he really said it was both easy and hard. So I do think it leans more on the hard part, I think, for our judges. And now, that being said, I think we're all ready to meet our finalists. Am I right? I think we're ready to get introduced to our finalists and their great batch of work this year. So now we invite again on stage Dr. Dalisay along with Mr. Ruel 𝗍𝗂 and Ms. Mookie Katigak-Lacuesta to be here on stage to recognize the finalists of this year's 23rd Madrigal-Gonzalez Best First Book Award. So, first, we have Even Ducks Get Liver Cancer, a collection of personal essays by Dr. Wilfredo Liangco. We now invite Dr. Liangco on stage. His citation will be read by Mr. Ruel 𝗍𝗂.
Our finalist, Wilfredo Liangco's Even Ducks Get Liver Cancer. How does one make a doctor? This is the question posed and answered by Will Liangco in this memoir, which chronicles his journey through survival in medical school, internship at PGH, and residency at the hospital's Cancer Institute. As the book tells us, it was painful, but it also could be funny and beautifully compelling. In her introduction, Jessica Zafra tells us why. It's just as well that more physicians are not moonlighting as writers. The subject of literature is the human condition, the knowledge of our frailty and our stubborn capacity to endure is the stuff of literature. And this is where doctors set up camp. And this Liangco does well, showing us how late nights, fears of his own mortality, which basically amounts to poverty, as well as medical know-how lead up to becoming an oncologist for the needy, a path that would have broken lesser people. Instead, this doctor writes a medical memoir that works for non-doctors too. After all, he himself writes, not all stories in the hospital have to be about great tragedies or triumphs of the human spirit. So here's to a doctor who wrote a good book about how he became a doctor. May you all read it. And here's to a next book about his continuing medical misadventures. Congratulations, Will.
Next up is Arlene J. Yandug's poetry collection, Coming Home to the Island. We now invite her on stage, and her citation will be read by Ms. Mookie Katigak-Lacuesta.
As diverse as the islands they belong to are narratives that circumnavigate home and the world in a single poem. In one poem, kidneys are bought and sold, a Filipina loses her wallet, a teenage girl lops off her father's head, and Henry Cavill trains for a Man of Steel flick through superhuman training. In another poem, a tender, knowing lyric blooms on martyred soil. No one goes to the hill anymore, where the grass knows something. This thrilling debut collection makes the case that even as home is archipelagic and fragmented, it is still home. That the case is made through such rich and multi-layered strategies of storytelling attests to the skill and imagination of a first-rate poet.
Thank you. We now invite Ms. Arlene J. Yandug and Ms. Mookie Katigak-Lacuesta for a photo opportunity with our citation. We also have Alandal, a graphic novel by 𝗍𝗶𝘃 Ignacio. His citation will be read by Mr. Ruel de Vera.
Alandal. There is a reason that Alandal has won the National Book Award for Graphic Fiction, the National Children's Book Award, and was selected by the Philippine International Comics Festival. It's because there are other projects that attempt the same thing, but nobody does it this well. It's a reimagined tale from our history, just cooler. Sabina, the 12-year-old daughter of a Spanish conquistador in exile, who is kidnapped by pirates and spirited off to Jolo. Once there, Sabina discovers her true identity as the granddaughter of Sulu's Sultan. But all that changes when Sabina crosses paths with an enigmatic swordsman named Alandal. What ensues is bloody, exciting, and actually just the beginning of what promises to be an epic saga. Ignacio and Alex Nino have worked together before, but Alandal is their first long-form graphic fiction story together. This tale that Ignacio, a comics with a K and a comics with a C lover, has been working on literally for years, is a dream come true. It is not every day that one gets to collaborate with Nino, a legend of both worlds of comics with a K and comics with a C. But not only is Ignacio's tale one of our own, but it presents Nino's art in a landscape format, literally too big to fit the normal comic page, as well as a modern age style that we have never seen before from him. Alandal is a case of the new and the old melding to become something no one could have foreseen. Congratulations, 𝗍𝗶𝘃 Ignacio, for Alandal.
Thank you. Next up is Armor, John Bengan's collection of stories, who is also one of our finalists. This citation will be read by Dr. Butch Dalisay.
All right, this is for John Bengan for his book Armor. In 13 stories, the author of Armor captures life and its endangerment in a corner of the archipelago that we outsiders like to think of as 𝗍𝗏𝘁, only to realize that 𝗍𝗏𝘁 would become a metaphor for a larger malignancy. But it engages many other subjects and dispositions as well. 𝗍𝗏𝗁 Pacquiao speaks to a butterfly in California is both hilarious and heartbreaking, revealing the author's masterful dexterity in the treatment of his material. That material is none other than our Filipino-ness in its carnivalesque variety, from the magnificent to the macabre.
And last but definitely not the least, All My Distances Point to Home, a poetry collection by King Llanza. His citation will be read by Miss Mookie Katigak-Lacuesta.
In this remarkable collection, truth is given a body with words, the soul is given a body with the world, and the poet is never more aware that they inhabit a body than when in love. In poems both tough and lyrical, often at the same time, the poet makes the erotic truism achingly known, that to love with a body is also to open oneself to losing with a body. Our first and last, our fixed and shifting home. Congratulations.
So once again, everyone, Wilfredo Llanco's Even Ducks Get Liver Cancer, published by 𝗍𝗶𝘀𝗶𝗃 Publishing. Arlene J. Yandug's Coming Home to the Island, published by Xavier University Press. King Llanza, All My Distances Point to Home, published by the University of Santo Tomas Publishing House. John Bengan's Armor, published by University of the Philippines Press. And J. Philip Ignacio's Alandal, published by Comiket. Everyone, please give a warm round of applause to the finalists of the 23rd Madrigal-Gonzalez Best First Book Award. This is truly an impressive batch of books. Like, we see a range of poetry collection, we have a graphic novel and other forms of stories. And of course, we're all excited to know more about how they work on the books, am I right? So now we have Dr. Dalisay, who will now guide us through an exciting sharing session with our finalists as they spill the tea or beans that led to their first book. And here's the good part. I know some of us here are dying to ask some questions to our writers and authors about how they came up with their first books. So I advise everyone, please prepare your questions because we will have an open forum later when you can get to ask them what you want to know. Anyway, without further ado, I hand the mics to our awesome finalists as they share their journey with us, facilitated by Dr. Dalisay. Let's give them another warm round of applause.
Thanks for that, Philip. Well, I think we should, of course, ask the obvious first question. What led you guys to write your first book? Why now? Why this? And what was it like to finally see your name on the spine? Like I often tell my students, that's what you should aspire to. Look at the book, and then your name is on the spine. But how did you get there? Anyone, please. Go ahead.
Well,
Jay.
With regard to Alandal, it was I just felt that it was a story that needed to be told. Initially, I was writing it as a screenplay because I had this movie in mind, born out of my research for a documentary film that I made 10 years ago called The Bladed Hand, about the history and the culture of 𝗏𝗏𝗏. And one of the documents that I came upon was the Spaniards who were stationed in the Visayas, priests who were sometimes also soldiers, had to organize the parishioners into militia-style, train them in militia-style response for the annual pirate raids that came to their island. So whatever indigenous Visayan fighting arts there were got mixed in with the Spanish-style training, and that became the progenitor of the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 we know today. And I was just imagining that clash of the silat that the pirates were known to practice, clashing with the emerging martial arts style that we know today. And so I had this somewhat movie in my head that that I very casually pitched to Alex Nino without thinking that I was just telling him a story that I had in my head. I wasn't really pitching to him, but then when he responded with, "Oh, gawin na natin yan habang buhay pa ako." Like, teka, hindi pa buhay yung story. So, I felt like I had to finish that. What I told him was the first chapter in the book. And then, so I didn't, it wasn't my dream or in my list of things to do in life to become an author. I was a musician. So to see my name on that spine was surreal for me kasi parang it was an unintended consequence. But I was very, very thrilled to see it finally. I have to touch the book and pinch myself and say, "Totoo na to." So it was a thrill that I couldn't describe. I was just very elated, and I decided, okay, I'm going to continue this.
John, your book also, you are from Danao.
Yes.
Yes, and that figures
Yes, very much.
prominently. So tell us about how you wrote your book and the stories and how your where you came from really rooted themselves in your stories.
Yes. I always tell people in events for the book, when we were promoting the book, that I wrote this story. I wrote the book for 17 years. I say that because the first story in Armor was written in 2003. Basically, it was published in the Free Press when they were still a Free Press, and that was when I was perhaps one of the gladdest moments that I've had when it got published in Free Press. I was like, I need to continue because it was good enough for the editor, and it happened to be about a story from the point of view of killers. And that time I was, figuring out the craft of the short story, and just starting to really take it seriously. And at the same time, what was happening around me, around people I know, was this violence that was going on in Davao City every day. In the early 2000s, and it's all in the newspapers, local newspapers. And I commute from my parents' house to the university, UP, there, and it's quite a commute. So I always see these headlines, and it made its way into my story. And then after that, I didn't know that I was writing a book. It was only later, perhaps, about several years later, when I wrote Armor, the story Armor, it started to cohere for me. Because at that time, I just had this big idea that a story collection need to demonstrate, your facility in writing good enough that it's publishable. But of course, as time went on, I realized that you have to really dig deeper and at the same time have a coherent, cohesive, and powerful statement through your art. It's not just collecting several pieces together, and so that's probably why it took me so long to finish it, because I had to. The other story ideas did not come out of me that quickly, and then I thought I was ready to publish it sometime in 2015, 2014. But then we know what happened in 2016, and I said, "Oh, I have to wait and understand it from a larger context now, because what I thought was happening only in our city was eventually magnified, and it made the events that happened in the last 6 years made it more stark and at the same time meaningful, and at least to me, how I understood my material, and so yeah. That's how I was able to write it. I wasn't born in Davao. I was born in Panay, but when I was 11, my parents moved to Mindanao, and I've always felt that I somewhat an outsider, because I've already had a strong sense of my Visayaness. And then when we moved to Mindanao, it was when I learned another aspect of my identity, having lived there for most of my life, and so I think that also helped me to look at the material from a certain distance. So yeah, when the book got published eventually, and I saw my name on the spine, it was of course a happy moment, but at the same time strange, because I didn't feel like it was mine anymore. I mean, writers always say that, but it's actually true. At least for me, when I saw my book on a bookstore in Davao, so because usually you just look at other people's books. I am not used to seeing my own work. So that's how I was able to come up with Armor.
In Coming Home, there's so much that goes on in the single poem. That was what fascinated me. There were always these two parallel storylines, two or more parallel storylines, or two or more parallel images, or two or more parallel worlds going on in a single poem. I was just wondering, how long does it normally take you to write your work? Or how long did it take you to finish this collection? We'll start there.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I feel like I'm defending again my thesis. It depends, no?
Sorry.
There are poems that would take like years, no, to finish, to be completed. Like I remember there's this one poem about this bus explosions. I think the title is Ferry Highway, referring to the main highway that goes through the island of Mindanao. And it's a very short, simple poem, and I submitted it to a workshop in Iligan National Writers Workshop. But then it took me a while, like I think it took me forever to really find the right voice and tonality of that poem. And I thought it's one of the minor poems in that collection. But then one friend of mine, an acquaintance, she texted me after buying the book, and she said, "You know what? Of all the poems in the collection, this one resonated with me the most." And I was so shocked. I thought this is a minor poem. And then I looked at it again and I said, yes, because this is a poem that mirrors our collective experience in Mindanao. So it's something that we can recognize, no? Like it tries to capture the anxiety of a passenger who goes back home, like going to the city and going back home. That is the experience that it tries to embody, like from going to Xavier, studying at Xavier, I have to go back home, and that's 3-hour journey. But then there is always this anxiety nga basin muboto ang bus. It will explode in the middle of the road. So that is the anxiety that it tries to capture. So that's like 5 years, no? But there's also this another piece in the poem, like February and Many Voices, which my mentor, Paulo Manalo, he said that he likes the poem so much because for him, it keeps giving something new every time he reads it. So in that sense, it is very generous. But then I said to him, you know what, sir, this is something that I just wrote like in a day, no? Like, I finished the whole thing right after listening to Rudy Rodil. I think you know him, a very important local historian in Mindanao. While I was listening to him talk, there is this like the Holy Spirit coming to me, and then I just before the talk, I just wrote the entire poem during the seminar. No? So when I went home, it's just a matter of polishing it up. So to sum it up, it really depends no sa mga poem, sa energy ng poem, o sa level ng inspiration. As to the question of yung parang excitement sa name, seeing your name on the cover, when I saw it, parang no excitement at all. Because perhaps I have been jaded already. Like, life has overtaken me, and then that manuscript has lain in the dark for so long, like 100 years. And it's just a miracle that it got to see print finally, eventually. So by the time that it's there, okay, sige, welcome to the world. So yun lang yung feeling ko. So that's all.
Okay, we're good. Yeah, now Will, one of the things I noticed when I read your book, or when we took it up, even in the workshop in Baguio, was how different it was from many of the usual books that we find coming out doctors, which would usually involve ER dramas and the usual clinical stuff, diagnosing people and so on. You actually get very personal in your essays, even to the point of, let's say, discussing or talking about your sexuality, your relationship with your father, and I want to ask you. This can't have been an easy book to write. What was the most difficult piece of that book for you to do? Or what was the most difficult part of putting this book together?
Thanks for that question. So there were, I think, 49 short essays in the book. No, I think the 48 essays I wrote very, very fast. No, I think in over 9 months I wrote most of them. Although that was the pandemic year, so it was relatively easy in terms of time management. But that one story, the one about Naitan, it's entitled Alleviations. No? So it took me 3 months to write that one particular essay. Because I've been trying to write it since his death, which was 10 years ago. And parang the lines were running in my mind. Parang I knew what words to use. I knew how to approach it. But I thought it would be very traumatic to write it. So it would be his 10th year death anniversary. And then I would have a manuscript. I thought this would be the perfect time to write this particular essay. So that really took a lot of time. But for the other 48 essays, they sort of originated when I wrote a blog during the blogging era, yung long form blogging, I think, Friendster, Blogspot, and so on. And because I realized that during my training in the government hospital, it wasn't really 100% doctoring. It was sort of 40% doctoring, 30% paperwork, and 30% engaging in a competition of whining on who was being more miserable. So sabi ko, sige, I don't want to write a medical memoir, which is mostly about like the triumphs or the tragedies of the human spirit. So why don't I write about my daily experiences and so on, about my friends? And I would document my experiences at night, so in my blogs, and then eventually the entry sort of piled up. No? And then sabi ko, sige, maybe this is one long story that I can sort of rewrite and just use these blog entries as a source document, no, to finally come up with the book. And that was what happened during the pandemic years, no, when since I deal with cancer patients, I wasn't really directly involved with taking care of the COVID patients. No? So I had a lot of time on my hands at the time, and I sort of just tried to put everything together and ask my friends to read the stories, and then I asked them to tell me, you know, if you think something should be taken out, or, and of course they all told me na, sige, it's okay to publish, parang I wouldn't mind. And looking back, I don't think they actually read the book. No? So sabi ko, sige, this is the waiver, no, the verbal consent that it's okay to print this book. And then when for me, I think the more excitement probably happened when I saw the cover studies. No? For me, that was the highlight. Parang this is the first evidence that this is really tangible. So there are many covers to choose from. There's a black duck, no, a yellow duck with a head bandage and so on. So I think that was the one of the highlights, no, for me, no, throughout this journey.
So King, I'd like to think that you belong to the tradition of lyric poetry. And what I like to ask, because I like to ask difficult questions from time to time, I think we kind of belong to the same tradition. But you know, are you aware of a reader? Do you have an ideal reader that you address when you write your work? For a lot of us, we do. We have an ideal reader reading over our shoulders. We have an addressable thou. Parang thesis ulit. Sorry. Do you have this in mind? Do you have an ideal reader in mind? Because when I read through your book, it seemed to me that you were addressing a particular you. Although the you kept shifting. I know that it was a journey from you to you. From one you to one you, from one place to one place.
Okay, we're really getting into this. I guess at the top of my mind, really the kind of audience that I wanted for this book to mainly address are, of course, queer people, and someone who's also chronically online, who loves to share the little things on the internet. It's also people who just love to microblog. So yeah, the reason why is that I have a tendency to not linger too long on a poem. My initial idea for All My Distances Point to Home was to make it an exercise in ekphrasis, where I was in graduate school at the time. I was reading through a lot of research articles and scientific papers, and I don't really have time to enjoy art. So how can I enjoy research papers? I could react to them in poetry. So I did very much that, and that initial idea didn't really materialize as well as I had hoped. So I wanted to inject a lens of my identity as a queer person into that, and my language really of expressing queerness is always a proximity, particularly to the body, and also proximity to a certain location, which is kind of the thesis of the collection in itself. And I wanted to address distance because it's kind of ironic that I am a graduate of environmental science, though I am someone who doesn't like to go outside. So what I had to do to at least remedy that is to, in what means can I empathize with the natural world if I'm not someone who comes close to it in a physical sense? So yeah, there's a lot of um, I guess, long distance channeling of how I feel about a certain place, or how can I project myself as if like an out of body experience into immersing myself somewhere there. And I like how it panned out. So the book starts with a poem about grief, and then it ends with another poem about grief. I wanted that to be a full circle, so everything else between it is life. And that's I guess is a good summation of the book. And to answer this question, the feeling I had when I saw the cover, I guess I was pretty indifferent at that point kasi when I get comfortable, I become an oversharer. So I'm pretty much okay with everybody seeing how personal how I got with writing the books.
So give it up for our finalists, everyone. Those are really truly inspiring stories, but also really funny ones at the same time. Since, you know, that feeling when you finally get the cover, there's a different range of reactions. But anyway, since they've done sharing their stories, the spotlight is now on our audience who want to know stuff or some advice, probably, or some spark to write their first book. You can ask our finalists, you can ask our judges by just coming here in front and taking up the mic if you want to ask any questions. Anyone like to ask? If not, I will probably ask the first question. So I think we're all here to celebrate your first books, but I think sa segue lang ako siguro na, are you already starting on your second project? And is there anyone with all of the finalists can answer this question if they're already starting their second project? How do you feel about starting it if you're already starting?
Yung Alandal kasi may mga kasabay na sinusulat ko rin. So, there are at least two that are actively in development. Alandal will have a volume 2. It's a matter of finding an artist who will take up from what Alex Nino has. Well, he declared that this Alandal is his final comic book. So we're bookending each other. It's my first and it's his last. But finding an artist who can
supposed to turn it in soon, but I'm almost there. He's not an easy writer to translate because I'm also a translator. So that's the pipeline, the English version of his novel Archipelago. And then hopefully next year I'll be able to start working on a novel in Filipino. Hopefully, I can't reveal whose it is, but I'm looking forward to that. And then during the pandemic, I started something also that I'm excited about. I actually wrote an essay so that's a hint what I'm trying to do. Wrote an essay in Filipino. It was published in Katipunan, and I started something. When the pandemic was over, it slowed down, which is weird, but it's there. And then I was out of the country for 9 months for a fellowship, so I finished a draft of a manuscript. So, but there's still a lot of work to be done. It's my way of trying to talk about it without really talking about it, but I can say that it won't take 17 years to finish these books. Yeah.
Yes, I'm actively doing my second book in my dreams. I've just done 1% of it, and all I can say is that it's the total opposite of the first book, because whereas the first book is so specific, like it can ground the experience culturally, historically, like you can identify the people there, the dates, the places. this one takes the reader into a cosmic journey. Like it's the experiences are, I don't know how to describe them, but the images that I'm using are mostly in the space. So in that sense, it's opposite to the first one.
Yes, I'm also working on a manuscript, no, a portion of which I've submitted to the UP National Writers Workshop earlier this year. So hopefully I can keep on writing more stories, and hopefully I'll be happy with it.
Okay. As for me, I will be releasing a zine online for free on December 15 called Emotional Inputs. My idea for that short collection of poems is the invasion of poetic language into academic visual interpretation. So poetry as graphs, as multiplication tables, as something else. And also, yes, I am currently working on my second book. I don't have a lot to say about it, but I have been reading a lot of Justin Philip-Freed, Claudia Rankine, 𝗍𝗲𝗄𝗎, and also Patricia Lockwood for this. It's a book-length poem, and if eco-poetry in my first book is mostly focused on damage-based narratives, the other facet of Pinoy eco-poetics focuses on desire-based narratives, which is more on what we aspire to have for a more sustainable future.
So there we have from our finalists really exciting teasers for the next work. And as we heard from King, he's going to release a chapbook online this December. So look forward to it. Anyway, we'd like again turn the spotlight on our audience. Anyone who want to ask some questions, just feel free, be comfortable to ask enough here in front if you want to know more about the writing process of our finalists and how they came up with their first book, or if you want any advice. Finally, we have one.
Hello po. Since it's your first book nga po, tatanong ko po sana if nahirapan po ba kayo na maghanap ng publisher na tatanggap nito at maglalathala nito? O ano po yung proseso ninyo po sa paghahanap ng makakapagpalimbag sa inyong mga akda or collection of ng mga akda? Ayun lang po.
Well, I didn't really think too much about it kasi a lot of the book was written during pandemic time then, where I had so much free time because full-time student ako sa masters. I only went to submit to one other publisher prior to settling with UST Publishing House, and I think I went with UST Publishing House because I noticed from their roster of titles that they do have a prominent amount of really good debut works. And I thought that it would be a good place for me to submit my own work there. And surprisingly, my collection was the first title that was released last year under UST, and they really took care of it well. I don't really have a lot of advice about this one, but just look into the works that are published under the names of those publishing houses and see how yours would fit amongst them if they have a seat in the table.
So I had no prior experience in submitting a manuscript, but I looked through the websites of the university publishing houses. And then I read there that they usually accept yung manuscripts during the first quarter of the year. So sabi ko sa'yo, habulin ko yung January of 2022. And then someone told me that Wilfredo is parang sort of being revamped, parang under a new management. So and they were looking for new titles. So sabi ko sa'yo, let me try my manuscript, submitting my manuscript to
work. No? So wala siya I don't know how to go about the publication process, and the fact that it has been published is a work of serendipity na lang siguro kay si Dr. Christine Ortega was so instrumental in the publication of that book because she helped me find the fund through the NBDP publication grant. No? And so once it was awarded that grant, then it was so easy for that book to get published. And I have to thank also the director of 𝗍𝗶𝘁𝗄 at that time, buti na lang hindi na ako yung director, who took care in the publication process of the book.
Sa akin, yung pinakamahirap na parte ay yung pagpili kung saan mo siya ipapasa. Pwede mo kasi siyang ilimbag ng sarili mo. Meron kang resources, syempre. Pinili ko ang Ateneo de Manila University Press dahil nagtatrabaho ako sa UP. Sabi ko, para maiba naman. Mukhang pa kami taga-UP Press dito. Hindi. At saka, kagaya ng sinabi kanina, nagustuhan ko kasi yung mga aklat na nailimbag ng Ateneo de Manila sa recently. And then, marami sa mga aklat na nabasa ko ay doon nanggaling. At nakita marami silang title sa Mindanao. No? Napakarami. Kaya kahit na social science naman yung mga yun, sa tingin ko, nakahanap ng lugar yung aking aklat, aking libro. Kaya ako siya sinubmit. Tapos, siguro inabot ng isang taon bago ako or less than a year bago ako nakatanggap ng tugon. Tapos, 1.5 ulit na taon, yung sa production part, editing, gano'n. Tapos yung cover, gano'n. Kasi kailangan, yun pala, dapat meron ka ng ideya kung ano yung pabalat, sino yung kukunin mong artist. Yun, kasi maliit yung ating industriya dito sa Pilipinas. Wala tayo yung machinery na ibang bansa sa mga palad, na meron silang ready pool of creatives. Sa atin, very parang professional, na lang, sinusource lang. So kung ikaw yung author, sa mga university presses, at least pagkakaalam ko, ikaw yung magdadala ng mga creatives din. Meron sila, pero gusto mo meron kang control. Ako kasi first book ko. So gusto ko na I have control, some control on how the book will look. Kasi nga, iba yung kapag nahawakan na siya ng mga mambabasa. So yun. Pero syempre, ang pinakamahirap talaga na parte yung pagsulat ng libro.
Yung graphic novel ko, hindi ko pinalak na maghanap ng publisher nung simula. Self-publishing ang original plan ko para doon. Nagkataon na yung Comiket pumapasok na into publishing. At nag-set up sila ng comics festival na may built-in competition. So they called for submissions. So nag-pitch kami isang araw. At I think out of ang pipiliin nila was 10 titles na ipapublish doon sa festival nila. Ay napili yung akin. Kaligayahan.
Siguro, thank you po sa mga sagot. Nasagot naman yung tanong ko. And, siguro yung last question ko po ay address kay Sir Liangco. Kasi nabasa ko po ang inyong collection of essays, yung Even Ducks Get Liver Cancer. At humorous po siya. Sa mundo ngayon, napakahirap magpatawa dahil ayun nga, may mga topics na hindi dapat gawing katawa-tawa. So, paano po yung na-manage yung balance po ng humor niyo po sa pagsusulat? Ayun.
Okay, so sabi ko dun while I was writing, sabi ko, syempre, patient stories which were very few, off limits sa any sort of humor. Parang there's no way I can make any joke land, no, if it involves patient care, no, kahit peripherally. No. So all the jokes should be pointed, or the humor, no, should be directed towards me, myself, my friends, my family, no. And most of these jokes I've been telling over the years na parang paulit-ulit. Na sabi ng mga friends ko na umikot na yung plaka. We've heard all these jokes before. So parang there's really no point retelling them. So why don't you just write them in the book? No? Maybe they would still sound fun, or maybe they would be funny, no, even if read. No? So ayun. Pero pag patient care, no, yung mga the serious stuff, no, parang I would probably not try to cross that line kasi it would be offensive, no, one way or another.
Thank you, Dr. Liangco, for that. Sir Butch would have a few more words to say. Yeah.
This is something of a surprise question because I'll direct it to my fellow judges. Do you remember your first book and how easy or how hard it was to come out with it?
Yes. So my first book, I thought I could just die after like one book. So I was a year out of college, and I joined the Palanca that year, and the book came out in '96. So, 97. So I had won the Palanca in '96, and so I had put the better stuff I had together in a collection, and I submitted it to Anvil, which at that time I really liked the material they were putting out, because at that time they had something called the Contemporary Filipino Writers series, and I wanted to be part of that. And the thing was, at that time, I was very new, and Karina Velasco is an incredible publisher and very encouraging. But even then, the problem was there were only so many books to go around, and so I actually made it like, we will publish you. But the problem was that we were supposed to be published like three of us in one book. And I have to be very, this is an honest thing for me. I did not want that. I wanted to have my name on the spine. I wanted my own code. They can understand this. I wanted my own. It was a very unpopular decision at the time. I got so much flack for it. Like, who is this guy? Why does he want his own book? Whatever. And I was very protective of this book, and they took very good care of me. And the artist was already passed, Albert Gamos, was very good with the design. Beautiful book. The Most Careful of Stars. Thank you. And my girlfriend Annie took very good care of that book as well. And it was for me, when it came out, despite all of the difficulty we went through, it was worth it when it came out, as in to this very day. Ooh, boy, back then, how many was that? How many did you used to do? 5,000? 500. 500. I wish 500 copies, which is by now an astronomical number, because back then, it was either 500 or 1,000. Yeah, back then, that was the 90s. And yung imprenta nun, talagang kailangan maraming kopya para mababa yung unit price, which is, now with self-publishing and all of that, you solve. But again, to echo, to see your book on a bookstore shelf, it's just amazing. It's just something, and of course, ginagawa ko yung hinaharap mo yung libro mo para hindi siya nakatabingi. Kasi when they shelf it, lagi siyang naka-spine out. So, kapag nakikita ko yung libro ko, hinihila ko siya tapos piniflip out ko siya para, alam mo, ibabalik naman nila yung later. Pero, sige na, diba? So, I was very proud of that book and it's still, such an important book in my life.
Well, Ruby was my teacher in college. So I I started writing poetry seriously in college. I was in Heights. And his book was a seminal book. We used to study it. And, I'd love to read it again, actually, after all these years. But, going to, my first book, it was always thrilling, but it started out as my thesis. My MFA thesis, and then it morphed into an entire book maybe 2 years after I graduated. But I was always conscious that, as you must have been, as you were recounting, that there was such a small market for poetry. In my first poetry collection was with Karina, but it was, it employed print on demand. So that in itself was a little, I would say I was disappointed, but I was well aware of the fact that there was really no market. And I was always working against that and always trying to prove the market wrong. But I still think that my best poetry is in my first collection. I don't know, Rui, if you feel the same way. So I feel like I wrote my best poem at 26, which is so sad because having said that, I tried to redo the first book actually a few years ago. My first book was called 𝗩𝗶𝘀𝗶𝘁, and then I redid it in a book called 𝗍𝗏 Redux, which was revisiting my thesis and really trying to look at the poems beyond language. And I really tried to see, hey, these were the emotions I was feeling at that time, at this particular point in my life. How come I know what the feelings were like, but I wasn't able to really talk about them properly in the first book? It was all about craft and pyrotechnics. And so I wanted to revisit it to kind of answer the question straight and not tangentially. I was happy with the first book, but I felt that I could improve it and I could improve the circumstances surrounding its publication.
I'm going to follow that up by saying that Mookie's right. That I considered the poetry in my first book to be the best poetry that I ever did. I think part of it was because most of it was written in college and right after college, dealing with like a serious breakup. Nung mapusok ka pa, talagang poetry ka lang ng poetry nun. Poetry, and that's all I did all the time was poetry. But there's also another element kasi when I started working as a journalist, I think writing for me, and I don't know if this is true for other people, alam niyo yung sa video games, yung meron siyang life bar. For me, ganun yung writing for me. May life bar ako, whatever kind of writing it is. And the more writing you do of any kind, nauubos siya. So, the longer years that I've spent being a journalist, talagang mahirap na mag-poetry. Kasi at the end of the day, ubos ka na eh. So it's become harder to write poetry as the time goes on. So, it's really like that. So when you look back at those days na kaya mo talagang, yung gano'n parang, masakit, sulat, diba? Parang gano'n. It's such a memorable day. Butch, what about you? What about you?
It's a long time ago. I wrote most of my first stories out of school. I was out of school for a long time. Wala akong network, wala akong kaibigan noon. Bumalik din ako sa UP. And I had a friend, the late playwright Boy Noriega, and we had a bet that both of us would publish our first books by age 30, which is kind of late by today's standards. So nung 1984, 30 na ako noon, talagang I felt the pressure to produce a book. And I don't know about you, pero ako, I was waiting for, sabi ko, I want to find my own voice, you know, yung the story must sound like me. Eh, yung mga unang 10 koleksyon ko, kung ano-anong, iba lahat about storya. Parang iba-iba yung sumulat. This was old-timer and other stories. And then I said, finally, what the hell? Ilabas na natin ito because if I don't come out with this, I'll never find my voice. Let's just get this out of the way. And noon, walang mga publisher noon. I found another friend, si Rafi Benitez, who now runs Area 1 Art Center dito sa Quezon City. He was a small printer then. Meron siyang printing shop dyan sa San Francisco del Monte. Sabi niya, Butch, may mga retaso ako dito. Mga retasong papel, from his printing jobs. Gamitin natin to, labas tayo na libro mo. So, sabi ko, sige. Tayo na mag-design. Nakahanap ako ng magandang postcard na litrato ng isang magandang babae in Pilipina from the 1920s. Mukhang maganda naman siya ilagay sa cover. So kami na lang nagbuo ng libro from scrap paper. And that, sabi niya, wala tayong pangalan para sa press. Naghanap ako ng magandang salita. Sabi ko, ito, may magandang bulaklak, ang pangalan 𝗍𝗲𝗍𝗶𝗋. Gawin natin 𝗍𝗲𝗍𝗶𝗋 Books. O sige, ganun lang. Gawa-gawa, lumabas din. I don't know how many 100 copies came out. Today, when I find a copy, I buy it. Just to have more copies of that very first edition. And siguro, as the senior writer here, I can tell you, 42 books later, it's kind of a big blur. But that first book always shines on its own, always has a special place in your bookshelf, because all of these first feelings come rushing back in you. And you remember how fresh you were, and how brave, and how desirous of writing more and being read. And I don't think you should ever lose that freshness.
Commercial lang. I had a copy of Old Timer. It was excellent because Doreen Fernandez taught us that story, yung message to xenocracy, and in class, and it was excellent. So I bought the book, and it was unusually shaped, right? It was longish. It wasn't like a standard shape. It was lovely. My favorite story is Old Timer. Cameo is also pretty good. And commercial because they put out Voyager, which is a collected stories, and the stories from Old Timer are in there. So please buy that book because you can read Butch's original collection in that book.
Thank you to our judges for sharing those stories about their own first books. I'm pretty sure that judging the Madrigal-Gonzalez Best First Book Award this year really took them down the memory lane. But I would like to circle back to our finalists. So before you submitted your manuscripts to the publishing houses, to whom did you first show them?
My story was the first person to see it is the late Jerry Alangilan, who was in the comic book genre. He's famous for being an inker for Marvel and DC Comics, but alongside that, he was also an instigator among the Pinoy comics creators. He was a driving force. He was insisting well, we create our own. So aside from him having that nice credential, no, of working for the big American publishers, he was an instigator here, and I showed I knew na he was an Alex Nino fan. So I said, "Oh, Jerry, oh, tignan mo to." And he got all excited. So he was vouching for my comic book before it even came out. So he posted a couple of times on his Facebook page. He was very excited that something like this was coming out, and yun yung, I guess, una kong publicity na nakuha. Yeah. So before getting published, it was Jerry who was making noise for me, and he was also my advisor in the production of the book.
The stories individually, they were read by different people. A lot of them were my classmates in workshops, in undergraduate and in my master's, and my writing teachers, of course, various writing teachers. I mentioned them at the end of the book. I studied with 𝗍𝗶𝗀𝗍𝗶, and 𝗍𝗶𝘀𝗀𝗍𝗶 Lucero was also kind enough to read a couple or 3 stories there. But the whole book, as you know, I think the only one who read the final draft prior to submission was the people at Ateneo Press and the reader, who I don't know. The reader of the reviewer of the press. That's the first person, as apart from the staff of the editorial staff of the press, who were able to read the entire book. But individually, the stories over the years, they've been read by different people. And I have a couple of friends who I share my work with. They know me as a writer, and also as their friend, and they're not very friendly when it comes to giving their comments, which is a good thing. So yeah, but the entire book, I submitted it to the publisher directly.
I think the first person to read the book as a whole was Paulo Manalo, my mentor. And then I remember I didn't want to show it to my friends because they would just say good things about the poems, and I want some honest suggestions about the poems. So what I would do was to submit the poems to different magazines and publications, and that's when I would be very happy if I would get feedback, like annotations of the poems, because I find the annotations very helpful. Like this stanza is not working, or it's too wordy, or it's a little bit sentimental, because I tend to be sentimental, very emotional in my work. So I kind of want to rein in the emotion, but I just did not know how to do it. And one way for me to kind of get a sense of how to control the emotional quality of the work was to get an honest feedback from a publisher. So that's what I would do. And then I remember I also showed the manuscript to my sister, because I know in her heart she's a good writer, but she's a writer in secret, no? And I believe in her talent. So I showed it to her, but yung reaction, very indifferent. So I was second guessing my work again and tried to let time kind of ripen it a bit and try to revisit it again. So on the whole, it's really the panel, my mentor, and my sister.
During the pandemic, no, in 2020, the Bienvenido and Santos Creative Writing Center of Lasal had a pandemic workshop via Zoom for doctor writers, and they submitted two stories which are in the book, yung Reasons to Quit, tsaka yung Tales of Terror and Relief. And it was conducted by, the workshop was conducted by Professor Marjorie Evasco. And they said no that and the other panelists know that they like the stories, that they found it funny, etc. So Professor Marge said that she really liked the stories, the two stories. So I asked her, would you mind reading an entire manuscript of these stories? So sabi niya, sure, just send them over. No? And then I asked her, na I haven't won any awards, so I'm not really published, so I don't really have a lot of experience when it comes to writing. So let me know if this is something that I can submit to a publisher. And she was very gracious. She told me to just let the work speak for itself. So she sort of became my mentor for this particular project.
Going back to what I said about being an oversharer, I was fresh from my first ever writer's workshop, and I remember one of the panelists telling me that I should blend my academic background into my poetry. So because of that, I had a habit of posting each of the poems from the collection on Facebook. So almost everybody read it as individually, but as an entire collection, I wanted to be very particular about the audience. So I shared my work with Dr. 𝗩𝗂𝗂𝗏, who's an amazing scholar and also a poet herself. And then also a friend from LaSalle. He's not queer, but Ed Mark Tan really brought about a lot of my habits and sort of fixations when it comes to writing poetry front and center. And my manuscript came back all red all over. So that was a good awakening. And then lastly, the people from Body Boy, of course, when I submitted it as a manuscript, when it got nominated for a prize there, the citation was very much helpful because it provided an insight onto what I am really going after in that collection.
Thank you to our finalists. Really interesting stories about who they shared their first manuscripts with, because the feedback can either really make or break the book at the end of the day. So we circle back to our audience. Is there anyone who would like to ask some questions about the first book of our finalists? Oh, finally. The attorney, Tinola. We invite her to please come to the mic. Thank you.
Hi, so maybe this would be a question that would be of interest to upcoming writers. So first is, did you start life as writers? And second, how do you combine your writing with whatever else you're doing, assuming you're not a full-time writer, which you could be, of course?
I didn't really start as a writer. I wanted to, as someone who was once an active participant from born again church, I was really into music. So I started with more songwriting than poetry. And I got more serious into writing poetry because of my first breakup, which is, I think, pretty typical for a poet who writes love poems. But I also recall there was this one interview after 𝗍𝗶𝗶𝗍 won the Nobel Prize, where I'm not sure exactly what she said about it, but she mentioned about her experience of having difficulty writing poetry when it was all that she did. And it was when she got into teaching more and more that all the poems that she wrote for the rest of her bibliography came to life. And I think it's important for every writer to not just be immersed in the kind of genre that they're writing, but also to really just live a little. Because everything that we write about, regardless if it's something that we imagine, is always rooted in truth.
I would like to think, no, that I started out as a writer of sorts, and I feel like I've been trying to break into the parang writing community for the longest time. No? In fact, when I was in college, I was a psychology major here in UP Diliman. That was in the late 90s. We had 3 units of free elective, no? And I decided to. I was so happy, that I could choose whatever subject course I want, and I chose the short story. That was in 1999. My professor was Mr. Paran, no? And I really enjoyed that class. No, until now, I would always look back. That one semester, I had very, very interesting classmates. No, they were so different from my other friends, who were planning to get into medicine. For the second question, naman, ma'am, I think it's really very difficult to sort of find the right balance. With your day job, and the writing. So for me, at least for me, it's really an active decision, to sit down and find the time for it. And I can't just wait for inspiration to come. Kasi parang sometimes I have free time but there's no inspiration. So I just have to actively sit and then just write whatever I've been thinking about, and then hopefully it will be good.
I consider myself, when I was young, I consider myself a visual artist, although I did not have a formal training in visual arts. But I love drawing and painting, especially environment and atmospheres and moods. And I think this inclination to capture moods and atmospheres and scenery got transmuted into writing. And I can sense that when I write, I love to write about moods and atmospheres. Like I want to capture the heat, for instance, of the sun. Like parang it's verbal transmutation of a painting. So by profession, I'm a teacher. I teach literature and research writing. Ironically, dapat creative writing through research sa mga ponggi tudluan. Yes, I resonate with you so much, no? Lisod kayo mag-balance. I'm speaking in Bisaya now. Between teaching and writing, and I'm looking forward to retiring already, so I can focus on writing. Like there's so many ideas in my head, but I'm swamped with administrative work and teaching load. So there's really no time to sit down and just really write, seriously. So hopefully, through divine intervention, we can have some moments where we can really focus on writing.
I also thought that I was going to be a visual artist when I was younger. I wasn't also formally trained, but I used to draw a lot, and yeah. It was only in university when I found writing to be something that I want to do also, particularly fiction. But it's become more difficult to write. I think it's something that I've read before, but now as you grow older, it's more difficult to kind of outdo yourself. The more you learn about it, the more you know how to do it. In a way, it's easy because you know already what you're going to go through, but it becomes more difficult to execute it. And I also work in the university, and there's a lot of admin work and teaching, sometimes overload teaching. And I may be fortunate, lucky, because I teach literature, so it's related, but actually it also takes a lot of your energy and time. So it's a matter of scheduling, and it's the discipline of applying the discipline. What I found, recently as something that helps me is that I try not to just write my own work. I also translate. I found translation to be like, perhaps the best teacher of writing for me. I echo what Javier Cerca says. Javier Maria says about Spanish. Javier Maria said that translation is a school of writing, and I'm discovering that that's true. Because ultimately I love language. I was born speaking a language in Panay, and then when my family moved to Mindanao, I spoke learned how to speak a different language, and then of course Filipino, and then so the translation kind of brings me back and allows me to shuffle among these different languages, and it energizes me in a different way that my own work could. So yeah, so I'm trying to do that. Although it sounds it sounds like a contradiction because you're making yourself more busy, but sometimes the lull that I go through between stories or chapters in a novel can be difficult, and you need to distract yourself and do something more, a different creative project. So yeah, that's how I sustain my work.
I consider myself primarily as a musician, and elements of music and musicianship will always make their way into whatever it is that I do. So when I'm writing stories, I think in beats and rhythms and sometimes rhyme. I just can't help it. But I would say music would be the driving force in my whatever creative venture I get into. So it's even in the graphic novel that I wrote, there are a few pages there that are written in the style of lyrics to simulate. It's a dance scene where an assassination takes place, and so I wrote it that way to primarily for myself to feel the music while I was writing it. Yeah, so music creeps into everything that I do.
Thank you to Attorney Montinola, and of course to our judges and to our finalists for those really wonderful stories about their first books. And now, unfortunately, the time is up for our open forum. But fortunately, we are finally at the moment we have all been waiting for. It is finally time to award the winner of the 23rd Madrigal-Gonzalez Best First Book Award. So now, we invite on stage Dr. Butch Dalisay as well as Attorney Gisela Madrigal-Gonzalez Montinola to hand out the award for our winner this year.
This was a very exciting but also difficult decision to make because all of you guys produced impressive first books. But the judges finally came to a unanimous decision, and our Madrigal-Gonzalez Best First Book Award winner for this year is John Bengan. Yes, will the judges please join us? Another photo. Thank you very much.
Everyone, once again, give it up for John Bengan's Armor. He will now take the stage to share with us an excerpt from Armor, the champion of the 23rd Madrigal-Gonzalez Best First Book Award.
I'm gonna read an excerpt from 𝗦𝗍𝗶𝗃 Pacquiao Speaks to a Butterfly in California because it was cited in the citation. Okay. So in the story, 𝗦𝗍𝗶 Pacquiao, the fictional 𝗦𝗍𝗶 Pacquiao, is looking for his mother in a part of Davao City. Apparently, his mother in the story has eloped with a dance instructor. Finally, I reach. There I see, in the back of 𝗍𝗶𝘁𝗄 tree, the only house made of cement. Butterfly, to be honest to you, I almost go back. My chest start to pain, very hurting pain, and my stomach like burst. I only feel that time when I'm still small boy and watch Papa punching Mama in the body one night they fighting. I feel it again when the girl I have crushed laughing to me after I tell her I love her. I was still working in the bakery that time, deliver pandesal and munay and pandikuko. I feel same pain when they announced that Eric Morales win after our first encounter in the ring. That time I cried to God. My chest is very tight to exploding. I almost stopped boxing good for life. My soul is feel like rug. But like all those moments, I courage myself. For my countrymen before, for myself now. So I walk to the door that is open actually and I see the TV showing afternoon love story drama. There are two little girls watching the TV. Is there people here? I asked the little girls. I step inside of the sala, seeing picture frames on the wall and diplomas and face of Jesus Christ with eyes that don't stop seeing you. Not far of Jesus Christ is calendar of Angel Locsin wearing white two-piece. After the TV, there is a wood shelf of figurines and plates and teddy bears big and small. After the shelf is kitchen with round table and gas stove. An old ref, I see two doors of two rooms. After one of the girls shout, the DI get out of the door near the kitchen. He wear only sando and short pants. When he see me, his knees start to shake. He know already that he is very bad shot to me. In that moment, my two hands itchy like 1,000 ant is biting me. I can erase that face from his head for just one swing, you know. It's gonna be hurt, but I can do it easy. Still, I cool my head. I think him as opponent in a fight because, you know, I don't take lightly my opponent and always think he's a champion for this fight and he's bigger than me, stronger, and I have to focus and concentrate the fight. I cool my head, but my hands are fists. Again, I asked to him, same question I asked to everybody. Nadiri ako, Mama.
Thank you, John, for that really wonderful excerpt from Armor. And I do think we're going to have copies of Armor later. Once Ateneo Press is here, you can also get copies of course, Armor from online stores, the Ateneo Press, and of course from the Ateneo Press itself. Now, we've been on a really wonderful afternoon to know more about the first books, the journeys that our writers took to get to their first books. And unfortunately, every journey, every book must come to an end. So now as we reach the conclusion of the program this afternoon for the 23rd Madrigal-Gonzalez Best First Book Award, we now invite back on stage Attorney Gisela Madrigal-Gonzalez Montinola for her closing remarks. Please give her a warm round of applause.
Hi, so good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank our panel of judges led by Butch Dalisay. Thank you to Butch. Thank you to Mookie Katigak-Lacuesta. Thank you to Ruel Vera. As some of you may know, the first winner of the Madrigal-Gonzalez Book Award was Sarge Lacuesta. So I don't know, I never know whether to call it the better half, the other half, the worst half, or not a half at all, right? Half redux. The proxy of Eros redux of Mookie Lacuesta. So I'd also like to thank, of course, the UP Institute of Creative Writing, the director, 𝗍𝗶𝗶𝗀, and Deputy Director Vlad Gonzalez, and of course acknowledge the presence with us today of National Artist Rio Almario, who has been a stalwart supporter of the Madrigal-Gonzalez Book Award. I've seen the award grow over the years. We didn't used to have panels. We didn't used to have nice plaques for the finalists. So yeah, it's great to have this open forum now and the ability to meet you and the ability to hear your own words. So just quickly, yesterday was Thanksgiving, and so I thought the few words I would say today would have a Thanksgiving theme. So first of all, thank you for the courage of your writing. Thank you for allowing your writing to be embodied in a volume that is deeper and more tangible than the computer screens we usually see today. Thanksgiving is also a time of bounty, so I imagine your book starting with a few words, maybe an image, maybe an emotion, and you're tending it to grow into a tree that, like all trees on our earth, are boundless. The third is a wish. So my wish for you is that you continue in a community of writers, that you find the support you need, and that you're forever able to access that mysterious source that I guess is where creativity and understanding comes from. And that when you access this source, you bring it as a light into the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Gisela Madrigal-Gonzalez Montinola, for those closing remarks. And that's a wrap, folks. We've come to the conclusion of the 23rd Madrigal-Gonzalez Best First Book Award. And again, we'd like to congratulate John Bengan for being our winner this year, as well as to our finalists who are with us this afternoon. Thank you, everyone. But before you go, don't forget to like and follow our Facebook page at Dalikaan UP Institute of Creative Writing at facebook.com/UPICW to get the latest updates on our projects and activities. We also like to remind everyone to please return our feedback forms to the Secretariat booth near the entrance because we highly appreciate your feedback. And of course, as we end this program, we'd also like to remind everyone that we're going to have more activities and more programs this afternoon. Stay with us as we launch the Likaan 17 journal as well as the titles this year of the Philippine Writers and Translators series, which will begin in an hour. Join us as we unveil and share a collection of captivating stories and thought-provoking works from talented authors, editors, and translators. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Once again, this is 𝗩𝗶𝘀𝗻, but I'm not signing out just yet because you'll see me later in the other programs. And once again, we like to invite our judges, our finalists on stage for another photo opportunity. Thank you very much.